Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and later in the show, I will give you a preview of a new hour-long documentary I just completed on the rise of Ron DeSantis. It'll premiere next week. But first, we are going to look at a few scandals happening on the local level. Last week, former Plantation Mayor Lynn Stoner was arrested on charges of official misconduct for allegedly falsifying records to help a developer. And North Miami Beach Mayor Anthony DeFilippo was arrested for allegedly voting using an address in the city, even though he didn't actually live there. And then there is the City of Miami. In a few minutes, you will hear from two Miami Herald reporters who have been investigating Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. Before we get into that, however, we have to start with another Miami outrage, this one involving City Commissioner Joe Carollo. A federal jury found Carollo liable in a civil case for violating the First Amendment rights of two local business owners. Those business owners argued that because they supported one of Carollo's political opponents, Carollo used the power of city government to try and shut down their restaurant, Ball and Chain, in Little Havana. The jury agreed and awarded the owners more than $63 million that Carollo is liable for personally. After the verdict, I spoke to one of the owners of Ball and Chain, Bill Fuller, and asked what the verdict meant to him.
Well, the most important thing is that this verdict is really a reputational redemption. After we filed this case, the city worked for many, many years in making a lot of these allegations against us in an effort to finally bring them to trial. And it was extremely disparaging against my partner and I. We had dedicated our life's work to revitalizing the Little Havana community. And we suffered not only the attacks on our businesses and our properties, but also the reputational attack. And so a huge weight was lifted yesterday after being 8 weeks in trial and having the jury see through the madness that was what the city was bringing to court and Joe Carollo. And it's a vindication. It's a reputational vindication, and it feels great today.
Well, tell me, what have the last few years been like for you as you've dealt with this, dealt with the city? And let me make this point. I mean, what was always so striking to me about what you experienced was this is dangerous, and I don't think people fully understood. This is the weaponization of government to try to silence people for their political views. The fact that you supported an opponent of Joe Carollo made you a target of government, and that should never be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the last few years is something that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. It was absolutely devastating to us, to our employees, to our vendors, to our tenants, the personal toll that it took on ourselves and our families. Our lives were really absolutely disrupted. And all because of this, all because of political payback, because of retribution, because of a man that really understands the mechanisms and the weapons that he has at his disposal, being in the power position that he has, and then mobilizing them, perfectly mobilizing and getting individuals in the city to do his bidding. And when they did not do his bidding, he either terminated or demoted them. And when they did do his bidding, he promoted them and elevated them into levels where they could continue to exact this type of revenge on us.
You know, let's be candid. It's a massive verdict that you're likely not to see anywhere close to the $60+ million that have been awarded to you and your partner. Does that make a difference that you're probably not going to see any of that money?
The most important aspect of this is that he has been held personally liable, and the money and the amount that the jury awarded needs to have a chilling effect on him. It is very, very important that he is held accountable and he pays this liability. If the city were to come in and pay this liability, it would be an excuse, again, for any politician, including Joe Carollo, to continue to conduct themselves in this way, knowing that there was a bailout down the road for him. If he can only scrape together $1 million or $2 million or even $300,000, it'll be small in comparison to the economic damage and harm he has caused us, but certainly it will have an impact on his life. And I can't even imagine that it would be the same, the one we had experienced. We hold him accountable, the jury holds him accountable, and he needs to pay for the damage he has caused us.
Now, he said he's going to appeal, and they'll review, obviously, the jury's decision, and it could be, that process could take years. What do you do in the interim? What steps are you taking to try to secure whatever you can get from Joe Carollo?
My understanding is that as soon as this week, our attorneys will be moving to attach to his house, for example, that he has in Coconut Grove. Like I've said, he is not just a bully, but he has also showed himself to be a coward throughout this entire process. He's a man that understood exactly what he was doing, and now he's trying to evade the consequences of that. And it's been his MO. He said he's the law. He thinks he's above the law. And he's going to continue to hide behind the city attorney and the fact that they're paying for his legal fees, and continue to try to evade what the government has now laid out and what our federal constitutional rights allow us to seek.
What do you think about the idea that the City of Miami taxpayers have been paying for his attorneys in a private civil suit against him and for his actions?
I will tell you this, that no corporation in America would have allowed this. Shareholders would never have allowed for a company, knowing that they were so wrong, to continue to fight and waste capital like this. Not a taxpayer that I know of has ever been advised or ever had the moment to vote on paying for Joe Carollo's legal fees. This is a unilateral decision that has been taken by the city attorney's office, and it's simply a way for them to cover all of their tracks, to be able to control the narrative here.
Do you think that this is grounds for him to be removed from office?
He absolutely should be removed from office. It is evident that he violated the city charter of Miami. He over and over instructed subordinates of the city of Miami manager without their permission to go after our properties and seek violations. That's a direct charter violation.
You sort of got a little emotional after the jury reached a verdict when you were speaking outside. Where does that emotion come from? What has this really been like for you personally?
I can only describe this as a situation I suffered as somebody who was like 6 or 7 in elementary school in Miami, where I was being bullied. And I never forget that it was my mom that had to come in and intervene and speak to the other family and really get me off the hook here. But this has been a true bully experience, one of a proportion that you can't even begin to imagine, because to defend it costs millions. To defend it has your legacy and your reputation on the line. It has people that have been professionals that you've known for years turn their back on you and subscribe to this level of madness. And it's something that's so shocking, because you feel that being in the US, you have the right protections, you have the legal protections that wouldn't even allow this to happen, that this wouldn't even be possible. And to think that this happens to you and to live with it each and every day, 24 hours a day, it keeps you up at night. It has you thinking when the next time this is going to happen, how it's going to happen, how it's going to cost you, what level. I mean, it's insane. And it was unbelievable, the emotional impact, the weight that I felt come off my shoulders and my partners when that verdict was read, was just the liability, just getting to the point that they understood and agreed that this man was in fact liable for violating us and our rights. It was a tremendous amount of relief and extremely emotional.
Did you ever think during this process of just simply walking away from your businesses in Little Havana, going somewhere else outside the city of Miami, maybe even leaving Florida entirely? Look,
the intent of Carollo's and the intent of the city was to absolutely break us. And when I mean break us, they wanted to bankrupt us. They wanted to shut our businesses down. They wanted to violate our properties. They were sending notices to our banks to suggest to our banks that they should be foreclosing on our properties. It's a huge weight. Like we have been successful and we have a lot of business, but but even larger businesses can be collapsed very quickly. And it was absolutely their intent to make sure that we never arrived at that courthouse and had our voice heard. We made tremendous sacrifices to make it happen.
But did you ever think about just walking away? Was there ever a moment where you said to yourself, maybe this just isn't worth it, I should just go?
Look, we love this city. We love Little Havana. We have dedicated it. It wasn't an economic project. Martin, my partner, and I have both Cuban heritage, and it was really a passion project of ours. And if we were simply to have just gotten up and left, that also would have been a victory for this bully, for this type of attack. And that's not something that we are prepared to accept yet. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to align ourselves what we think is what's allowable by the law. And we hope to and pray that we're going to be in Little Havana in the city of Miami for a long time.
Carollo continues to maintain he did nothing wrong and said he will appeal the verdict. When we come back, the Miami Herald investigation of Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Miami Herald has uncovered how a local developer hired Miami Mayor Francis Suarez to allegedly use his influence to push through a multi-million-dollar project that was stalled in the city of Miami. I spoke to two of the reporters on that story, Sarah Blasky and Joey Fletchis, about what they have found so far.
So what we know now is that Mayor Francis Suarez was getting paid $10,000 a month for at least a period of almost 2 years by a developer, Rishi Kapoor. And that developer, Rishi Kapoor, had business in front of the city, specifically this project called Urban Coconut Grove. And what that was supposed to be was a co-living workspace modern development project that Rishi Kapoor had been pushing. But in 2022, it hit some permitting problems, specifically a zoning problem. And when that happened, documents obtained by the Herald, internal company records provided to investors in this project showed that when that impediment was hit, Rishi Kapoor turned to Mayor Francis Suarez for help pushing it through. And ultimately, by the end of 2022, it did get pushed through. Those issues were resolved.
Joey, do we know how those issues were resolved and what role the mayor may or may not have played?
What we have from the records is references to contacts made to Mayor Suarez to help push along the project and permitting process. They're denying, the mayor's denying, the developer is denying, and the city manager, who was said to have attended a meeting in these records, these internal records, he's denying having attended a meeting about this project.
So, Sarah, explain to me what the potential issue is here. Why is this a problem? I mean, if I'm the mayor of Miami and somebody wants to do a development that can bring jobs in terms of construction, that can provide more housing, more work, flow for my city, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what the mayor is supposed to do to help projects like this along?
So on the surface level, this is very normal. Mayors, commissioners always bring projects to the city manager, the zoning director, saying, I support this project, it's going to be good for the community. That's kind of part of the job for an elected official. What the difference is here is that there were payments made, right? And so getting paid by a private individual for that action is something that ethics experts and legal experts say is the actual problem. That can create a conflict of interest, right? Between what is best for the community and the constituents that you represent and what is best for you as an individual, your bottom line, and the developer that is paying you. And that's ultimately the problem here, is that there was payments being made, and those payments totaling at least $170,000, according to documents that the Herald has reviewed.
Sarah, let me just stay with you for a second. Do we know what work? Let me rephrase that again. Sarah, let me stay with you for a second. Do we know what work the mayor was hired to perform? I mean, he is an attorney. Is there any proof that he was providing other services for the developer rather than political influence?
So, what Mayor Suarez has said on the record is that he was hired and being paid to do capital introductions, as in finding investors for these projects. What the developer Rishi Kapoor says he was doing was providing consulting on what type of restaurants and other mixed use things should be in this space. And what the internal records that the Herald reviewed show is that he was brought in specifically to assist in pushing this through. That is a direct quote.
Joey, I would imagine that one of the issues here, and the reason why this raises so many concerns, other than the direct payments from a developer to the mayor at a time when projects were pending before the city, is the fact that none of this was disclosed.
The mayor has for years declined to provide his client list. The Miami Herald has asked him several times. I've covered him for more than 5 years now and asked regularly who he's working for. He is a real estate attorney, and we only have visibility. We can only see from his disclosure forms which law firms he's working for at the time. And currently he's working for a law firm and a private equity firm. But it leads us to, wonder what probably you're wondering now, which is how many more of these jobs exist out there? How many more one-off or side contracts exist? And we're left to wonder, is he really identifying potential conflicts of interest on his own?
Sarah, the mayor was recently on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, and she raised your reporting from you, from Joey, from Jay Weaver, your colleague, talking about these potential conflicts and the failure to disclose his clients and how that may play going forward. And his response at the time was, I wish my hometown paper was more interested in the job I do as mayor than the other jobs that I do in my private life. Address that. Why is this relevant?
Well, I think this is relevant because he's the mayor, right? We don't care how private individuals conduct their business so long as they do it legally and lawfully. The reason that this is important, the reason that it's important that he was working on behalf of this developer that had business in front of the city and was sort of pushing this permitting process through according to the internal records. The reason that's important is because he's the mayor of this city. So it's directly tied to his job. And actually, that's the same reason that the Miami Herald would like him to disclose his full client list. If, as he says, there are no conflicts of interest on that list, then this shouldn't be a problem, right? This is something that the public only...
Let me just hold you there, just because I'll play devil's advocate on his behalf. As an attorney, isn't there something along the lines of attorney-client privilege where he cannot reveal who his clients are because it could, compromise him with the bar or with his clients?
I mean, that is certainly what he says. And I think there's a degree of truth to that argument. However, I think that anyone that hires the mayor of Miami to work for them should understand that they are hiring the mayor of Miami. They are not hiring a real estate attorney only. They're hiring the mayor. And it was clear from these internal records, at least in the case of Location Ventures, that they hired him, they kept referring to him as Mayor Francis Suarez or the mayor, not just Francis Suarez, the attorney, right? So he's being hired as the mayor. And that is an important distinction. And I think clients need to understand that with hiring a mayor, there needs to be a level of disclosure. But now that there are questions raised by this particular case with Location Ventures, and there was no transparency around it, it sort of does call into question the broader picture of who are his clients. Do they have business in front of the city? Has there been, the proper disclosures? And those are the questions the public has. And so far, the mayor has not answered those questions.
Joey, this all comes at a time when Mayor Suarez is entering the presidential race. He's got people already on the ground in Iowa sort of working for him. He's got individuals I've spoken to him, where he's talked about laying out a plan to run for president, that he has to get in the race by a certain date so that he can have the number of donors that he needs to get on the debate stage. And he envisions himself being a player nationally. What does this do in your thinking for his national ambitions, and how real are his dreams of being president?
Mayor Suarez likes to sort of play his national profile and the depiction of him in national media, in particular on Fox News Network and other conservative outlets, against the coverage that we're providing. It's part of what you asked earlier. Well, why does my hometown paper focus on this when everybody else is focusing on that? That's sort of the subtext of what he was saying. Well, I think that what this does is present some pretty basic questions about, how the mayor of Miami conducts his personal business, which is a pretty common question for a presidential candidate. He was asked on national television if he would provide his tax returns. He did say yes, and so we look forward to seeing that if it happens. But he is sort of aligning himself to make a run. Everything that we've seen suggests that he's putting the pieces in place. Nevertheless, as of March, a Fox News poll showed him polling at 0%. He will face questions in a campaign trail scenario about his private work, about what he's done as mayor, but also about what he does in his private business. And he has not been willing to sit down and have the most candid conversation that we could have about it. We would be interested in having that conversation, especially if he does declare to run for president, so that everybody can see.
Suarez denies he has done anything wrong. I recently spoke to Suarez, and he has agreed to come on the show, so we look forward to hearing his perspective. We'll be right back with a clip from my new documentary on Ron DeSantis. Stay with us. Before we go, I have been working for months on a documentary about the rise of Ron DeSantis, from a little-known backbench member of Congress to a leading presidential contender. Here's a clip.
Freedom is here to stay.
Before the first confetti cannon fired, talk turned to 2024 and that inevitable clash with another Floridian.
And that is the rivalry between DeSantis and former President Donald Trump.
Whom is the national leader? Whom's the leader of the party for Republicans? Is it Ron DeSantis? Is it Donald Trump? Or is it someone else?
Of course, there was a time DeSantis was comfortable living in the shadow of former President Donald Trump.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
Those days are over. DeSantis is attempting to do something few Republican politicians have ever done successfully: use Trump for their own purposes and then move on without him.
Yeah, well, that's hard to do. It'll be interesting to see how he survives this savagery that will come from Donald Trump and everybody surrounding Donald Trump.
If Donald Trump's support made him governor, then COVID made DeSantis a national figure.
This governor opened everything up, and it's about freedom.
And he wielded that word freedom into a cudgel to pass one of the most conservative agendas in the country.
There's been no governor like him in terms of the way he wields the power of the governor's office.
DeSantis will premiere Thursday at 7:30 p.m. online on CBS News Miami, and you can watch it next Sunday on TV from 8 to 9 a.m. right here on CBS. I hope you'll tune in, I really do. That's our show this week. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.